This is great. Thank you, Faisal, and good morning, everybody. And first of all, let's start by congratulating the organizers. I think it's amazing that you would do this on a Saturday morning. But what's more amazing is that you would try to build a community of tech entrepreneurs, tech executives in Southern California. And I think if there's one thing that Southern California needs and can support extremely well, it is exactly this community. And the reason I say this is about maybe like 2, 3 years ago, I was having a dinner with Brandon Nixon, who's the CEO of Lytics. And he says, Pradeep, what we don't have, we have a good biotech culture here, but what we don't have is a good culture of senior C-level, C-suite executives, a network of them supporting each other, mentoring, peer mentoring, just supporting each other. Pick up the phone, call somebody saying, I got this problem. What would I do about it? So we started hosting this dinner once every quarter. And now that I see all of you out here, I have your name and number. So we will invite some of you to these dinners. No, it's actually a good dinner. About 10, 15 people show up every time. And it's actually very interesting to realize that San Diego is more vibrant than one might give it credit for, or than it gets credit for outside San Diego. So, okay, so what was I going to do today? I was going to talk about the future of AI and IoT because that's the easiest thing for me to talk about. And the reason it's easy is because in 1982, when I have to tell you this story, I came to this country in 1982. I came to Carnegie Mellon to do computer control of power systems. That was my passion. I thought power systems were going to be controlled by computers. So coming from India, I was ready to do that. And I show up at CMU, and my advisor says, I don't know, this catalog you got is about 4 years old. Remember, there's no internet then. There is only snail mail. But I don't do that anymore. I do this new thing called robotics. And I had no idea what robotics is. I said, okay, are you funded? He said, yeah. I said, okay, I'll do it. So no, literally, right? So my master's thesis was on automated welding, seam tracking for automated welding, and then my PhD thesis was on designing direct drive robots and computer architectures for control. So the reason I tell you this is 1982. It was still a dream in everybody's eye. Carnegie Mellon was the first place to create the Robotics Institute. I was one of the first PhD students out there. But between 82, 86, when I finished, then I stayed there, and I stayed there till 2012. We went through a lot of difficult times, ups and downs in funding in robotics. There were every 10 years or so, there'd be times when people said, you know what, we put too much money into this. This is going nowhere. Let's kill this area. And the same thing happened with AI. So fast forward from 82, 86 to 94, I end up at DARPA for 4 years, 96, 94, 95, 96. And I'm managing large programs in autonomous vehicles, in planning and control for autonomous air and land vehicles, trajectory planning, stuff like that, and AI. And 3 years, every year, there was a battle between killing the programs and investing more money. So I don't know how many of you were living off of the government dole. If you were part of the research community, I see Todd out there, so he followed me much later. But it was always this battle of like killing AI, killing robotics, because these were all like wasteful technologies that were going to go nowhere. But I tell you what, I cannot tell you how glad I am looking at the program for this meeting today. And I think AI and robotics have come of age, and they really have not completely come of age yet. They're still, in my mind, like the equivalent of a teenager. And by the time they mature to be an adult, these areas are going to make very big difference in the local economy. So the way to think about what will make a difference when is to think about how technology cycles happen and how they change what happens in the economy. And if you're in this community, the best way to think about this, or at least people have thought about this, was in the context of uh, silicon doubling every 18 months or so, storage doubling, computing doubling, networking doubling. But I thought I'll take a different tack on this. I'll take a tack where instead of going back to what you're used to, think about this in the context of this Russian economist Kondrativ, and he had these notion of waves, economic waves. Now, this is an irony. He's a Russian economist who talks about capitalism. So clearly, these theories are not accepted in his country. It's not clear to me these theories work, but they're conceptually a good way to think about what happens. So this was a conversation we had at Sandak. So these cycle theory says that every 50 years or so, uh, there is a wave of expansion in the economy, wave of like real some because of some disruption. So if you go look at this chart here, let me see if I can put my glasses on. So 1780 to 1830, the first 50 years, you can attribute that to the invention of the steam engine. Because of the steam engine, a lot of good things happened. And there was an expansion in the economy, and this is primarily in Europe, but also in the US. 1830 to 1880, the next level of expansion was because of steel. The Bessemer converter, steel, railroads, you can just go down the list, right? So it's no single thing. It is a little bit here, a little bit there, all put together. So the real impact is there's large scale transportation infrastructure now. 1830 to 1880, and then 1880 to 1930 was electrification. Because of large scale electrification, like wide scale, like the country was electrified completely. There was light in every home. There was a whole lot of innovations happening there. Then came the age of the automobile, and suddenly distances that were like 5 days apart became like 1 day apart, and a whole lot of infrastructure, road infrastructure was developed, and that helped in more business and growing the economy. And then we know the electronic age around 70, 60, 70 onwards to 2010. And because of that, computing, storage, networking, you put it all together, and we are where we are right now. So the question is, what happens from now on? Like, where do we go from here? And I think the hypothesis is, and at least it's well known that data science is going to make a big impact, AI is going to make a big impact, robotics is going to make a big impact, and it's going to be about bioscience and biotechnology, right? So this is easier said than done. It's actually easy to say. But as the Chancellor of UC San Diego, what I've been trying to do is building infrastructure to make sure that we at UC San Diego are really the leading players in not only developing these technologies individually, but more importantly, in integrating them. Because I think the real impact is going to be in integrating these technologies and not just individually saying, I have a better algorithm to analyze this data. It would be understanding how to analyze that, how to impact the user on the other end. Okay, so let me add one more thing, and then I'll come back to the topic again. So, in about December 2019, there was a study released by the Brookings Institute about looking at centers for growth. And I'm going to connect, the reason I bring this up is to connect the role of UC San Diego in all of this. And what they said, and what they realized, or what they said was, that the future of America's economy is going to be in tech-based and biotech-based industry, and doesn't take a genius to figure this out. But that's exactly where things are headed, and it was kind of an obvious answer, but nonetheless, it's good to be reaffirmed. Um, and they said that then they found that these industries contribute a disproportionate amount to regional and U.S. prosperity. In fact, and then they realized, and then they said that 90% of the innovation was happening in these five centers. I don't know if I buy the number 90%, but let me just say a humongous amount of innovations happening in these five centers. And what is interesting here, which should be completely obvious, is San Diego's part of it. But if you go around the country now, you will see that people will talk about Silicon Valley, people will talk about Seattle, Boston. They might even put New York on the list. But I think not everybody would put San Diego on the list. And our goal, and I'm so glad that we are doing this here because I think we need to have San Diego on the list. San Diego actually has a very large infrastructure in terms of research. It has a very large infrastructure in terms of training people between San Diego State and UC San Diego, University of San Diego, and I can go down the list of a couple of others. But so this is a place. The problem is that we are distributed a little bit more than we should be. So I see UC San Diego as playing a very significant role in maintaining San Diego in collaboration with you all, and in addition to you all, San Diego on this list. We clearly are on this list for biotech, with San Francisco, Boston, San Diego, top three hubs in the country. But we need to be on this list for biotech and tech together. So what are we doing at UC San Diego? So at UC San Diego, we have made many, many significant investments. Like I said, in the area of information sciences theory, broadly defined, we have one of the best groups in the country for information theory. Actually, Sujit, is he here? Sujit, are you here? Okay, he'll be here somewhere along the line. So in terms of information theory, 5G, we are one of the best groups in the country. We just announced the creation about a year and a half ago, Data Sciences Institute, one of the leading institutes. And literally from the day we started to now, we already have like 15 faculty identified who are part of it, and we're going to hire another 20 or 30 over the next 3 to 5 years. This is going to be a powerhouse. And the Data Sciences Institute is structured as a separate entity. It is not in any division. It's not in engineering. It's not in social sciences. It's not in medicine. It's independent, reporting directly to the EVC. And the reason it's done that way is to break the silos, because if this was under any existing dean, it would be hidden under a broader category of strategies. So we wanted to bring this out and make it really a powerful strategy for UC San Diego. AI also belongs to multiple divisions. It's in cognitive sciences, which is one of the leading cog sci departments in the country. In social sciences, it's in computer science, and again, one of the leading departments, and it's in data sciences. Engineering, broadly defined, we just created about 4 years ago the Institute for Contextual Robotics. And this was an important creation because, remember my background, I came from Carnegie Mellon, one of the leading places, being a roboticist, and I come here and I realize that San Diego is actually a leading developer and creator of autonomous air vehicles. But UC San Diego does not have a very strong play in robotics, and that just did not make sense to me. So we invested a significant amount of money, hiring senior people, including Todd Hilton, who's sitting here, and really invested and built this Contextual Robotics Institute for UC San Diego to be a big player in this area, but also for San Diego to be a bigger player in this area, bigger than just autonomous air vehicles, because I think the impact of robotics is going to be much bigger than autonomous air vehicles. Uh, so what we are trying to do here at UC San Diego is trying to build these pillars of excellence, and all of them, in some sense, the real impact is going to be in life sciences and biosciences. And one of our four strategies is to impact human life and society when it comes to human health, longevity, and wellness. So this area, broadly defined, I think is going to be the way we at UC San Diego bring multiple technologies, multiple disciplines all together to impact each and every one of us. And this, I think, is going to be a really big industry. We are seeing a lot of economic, how should I say, development in these areas. Uh, So let me just take an example of robotics other than autonomous air vehicles. I think UC San Diego, in the area of surgery, we all know about intuitive surgical, but intuitive surgical with the Da Vinci robot is actually very limited in what they do. They are the pioneers, but they are limited in what they do. And we think that there's going to be more and more automation when it comes to surgery. It's going to be more like robots are going to be assisting doctors more actively than the doctors using robots. So it's going to be a collaborative effort between the two. And so there's going to be more autonomy, there's going to be more sensing, there's going to be more intelligence, and it's going to augment the skill and intelligence and reasoning of the doctors. Now, to get this done right, we have like more than 200 people across the campus, between School of Medicine, between bioengineering, between data sciences, between colleges, School of Engineering, all working together to really look at multiple aspects of what we should be doing in robotics. So here are some examples, like flexible robotic catheters. I mean, how do you create a catheter that it literally is like a snake made of flexible material? It can go down various parts of your body. Vine robots, micro catheters, micro and nano robots, looking at so a lot of these things you've heard about, but I think the difference is between one-off demonstration versus research that is creating two-off or three-off implementation to developing a company that is scaling it to create, to distribute that and make an impact. Uh, so let me. Oh, what happened here? Okay, something happened. I don't know what it is. Uh, and much of what we are doing out here is going to be applied to other new fields that 10 years ago did not exist. Microbiome. How many of you know about microbiome? Okay, how many of you take probiotics? Right? As much as you think that they impact your microbiome, the connection between research and the probiotic formulation, I think, is pretty much nearly a disconnect. But nonetheless, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. But microbiome, from being non-existent, has become like really the thesis or the hypothesis for human health and longevity, where just about every disease, if you talk to people in this area, can be traced back to your gut microbiome. We don't know if that's true. We believe that there is some connection, but we at UC San Diego invested more than $50 million dollars over the last 5 years in building one of the most powerful capabilities in this area. This new thing called the Center for Innovative Phage Therapy. So, if you think about drug resistance, there's more and more drug resistance in this day and age. So there's a famous case at UC San Diego, Stephanie Strathy, the doctor, and Tom Patterson, her husband, he was literally on his deathbed until they figured out, our immunologists figured out that phages basically have the ability to kill bacteria. So they had to find the right phage to kill this bacteria that he uh, contracted actually in Egypt. So there's a very famous book now. Actually, they're going around the country talking about this. It's called The Predator. What's it called, Todd? Do you remember? Yeah, it's called The Predator, I think. And there might even be like more implementations of this in movies or whatever. So this is brand new. This is trying to understand how do we use viruses to basically deal with bacterial infections. And it's a different way of doing business. It's a different way of creating therapy. And we just built a large center. We invested more than $10 million dollars trying to really build the science behind this. We know how to do this one off, but we don't believe we have the science behind this. We don't understand how to find the right virus to kill to kill the bacteria at hand. So that's one of the big things we are doing. Marine biotechnology. There's a whole lot of marine animals that don't get sick ever. They don't get cancer, for example. What are these chemicals out there? How do we extract medicinal value from these animals? And what do we do about it? So we are building scripts oceanography and pharmacy and pharmacology. They're all coming together to figure out what should we do about this. In all of these cases, there's large amounts of data that is being generated. And having this San Diego Supercomputing Center, having Data Sciences Institute, having powerful AI people there is really helping us put it all together to not only generate the data, to make sense out of the data, and from there create basic science. So even though we think that bioscience and life science is going to be the future, I think the problem is that by the time the transistor was invented, we had very good understanding of the physics of the transistor. We had very deep understanding of physics of materials and material science. I think on the biology side, we still don't have a very deep understanding of how biology works. And that's one of the areas that we should be investing in. And to understand how biology works, you have to invest a lot in quote unquote sensors and the ability to see biology work. And the ability to see biology work, you got to make investments in microscopes, electron microscopes, and very cutting edge microscopy that by itself is cutting edge research. So you can see how there's cutting edge research allowing us to see inside the human body and the cells, which allows us to build better microscopes, and it goes on and on. So we at UC San Diego are really the leaders in this area, where we've invested a lot of money in this to make sure that we are able to see things that most universities in the country don't have the ability to see, not because it cannot be seen, because they don't have the resources. So cryo-EM is one of the latest generations of microscopy instruments that we are buying and equipping our faculty with. Okay, so while we're doing all of this, we have basically argued for what I call innovation and entrepreneurship across the curriculum. It means that every UC San Diego student should have some level of entrepreneurial slash entrepreneurship experience during their 4 years or 5 years at UC San Diego. It does not mean they're going to go out and start companies. What it means is they should have the ability to see an opportunity, evaluate an opportunity, look at the risk, see if they want to be playing, understand a little bit of financials. So a little bit of here, a little bit of there, all put together will lead to a student who may not start a company ever, but who, when employed within a company, would be an amazing employee, would really be a very positive contributor. But many would start companies too. So we are doing this multiple ways. So there's something called the basement, where you go to this basement and you have an idea for a company, you're funded to do this. There's a very complex, sophisticated maker lab that we are building right now. So not only for our students, but also for the broader community, you can come to UC San Diego in about 2 more years and access this maker facility and do a lot of interesting things, for whether for hobby or for little prototypes. Entrepreneur in residence program. So if any of you have an interest, we are looking for entrepreneurs in residence, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, do pop-up courses, 2 hours, 4 hours. Just help us give the student the education that you all have through your experience and through whatever you've done. Institute for the Global Entrepreneur is a collaboration with the Rady School and Engineering. And the Office of Innovation and Commercialization is fundamentally changing what it takes to build a company out of UC San Diego. So my direction to this office is we got to make the friction zero between the inside to the outside and the outside to the inside. So what that means is if a faculty member wants to start a company, they should have no more than a 30-minute conversation with these people, sign an MOU, which basically says, I'm stealing this from nobody. Here are the 2 licenses I want. We don't want cash for these licenses. We want equity. We don't want voting rights. We just want equity that over time will map into something. We don't want to be evaluating technology to see whether you deserve the license or not. We want to make 1,000 flowers bloom. So we want to enable everybody and control nobody. So this is broadly defined strategy for the tech area. For biotech, it's slightly different because there the patents, the molecules may have a very different role. But still, I would prefer that we focus more on equity and less on extracting cash through licenses from startup companies. And I think we have already made a big difference in this area. Oh, did I go back? Okay, we have part of our campus, about 15 acres. We call it the Science Park, and we're going to convert that into an entrepreneurial slash innovation zone. We have La Jolla Immunology there. We just built the Center for Novel Therapeutics, where part of it, about a third of the space is for our research in cancer, and the other two-thirds is going to be entrepreneurs who want to build companies in this area. And we're going to keep on expanding this and bring more and more companies literally on our campus, proximal to us, so that we can build an ecosystem where our researchers and entrepreneurs can work very closely with each other and really do what the government investment in research was supposed to do, not only develop good science, but also have that science impact society and the quality of life. And I think we in San Diego, being the only R1 university in this state or city, I'm sorry, in this city, not have a very significant responsibility to make sure that this economy keeps on doing well. So if you think about us, and you may not know all of this, so we are the companies that are tied to or somehow related to UC San Diego are more than $30 billion of sales. More than 1,000 companies have been created, but we are number 4 public institution in startup creation in the country. I'm sure if I asked you this, you would not have predicted this. You would think of like other places, but we are number 4 in the country. And I want you to remember this because when you go out, be talking about this. We are number 7 in terms of patents issued to any public institution. We are a total revenue of 5.5 billion, but more than 1.4 is research. That puts us as number 5 in the country. Now, this is extremely significant. A 60-year-old institution, we are $1.4 billion of research. We are number 1 in terms of Golden Age universities, number 1 for best public for social mobility, and number 1 for enrolling and graduating women in STEM. This is very important because if you think about the whole tech community, there is a paucity, a shortage, or limited number of women and minorities in the broader tech field. If you're playing in this area, go to Silicon Valley, go anywhere you want, you will see in the venture capitals, PE, entrepreneurs, we need more women, we need more minorities in this business. And I think we take pride in the fact that we are the number 1 place in the country to graduate women in this area. Our impact in San Diego, more than 11 billion. In the state, more than 16 billion, more than 100,000 jobs. So what I'm trying to do here is tell you that universities play a very significant role in the local economy, and we do, and we will continue to do that, and we want to be able to do that. And to do that, we have to think about the university and how we are investing our resources in building new capabilities that are actually going to be the future of economic development for this country. So with that, I think I'm just going to stop here and say thank you very much for listening so patiently. Uh, are we done? Or this Q&A? Okay. All right.